Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to Ad Age Remotely. I'm Janine Poggi, Senior Editor here at Ad Age. And today I'm joined by the Head of Ad Sales for Fox News, Jeff Collins. Hey, Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing great, Janine. It's good to see you. How are you?
Good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, no, thanks for having me.
So before we get started, for those of you watching at home, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them on our social channels and we will try to answer them during this conversation. So Jeff, how is working remotely for you? Where are you working from?
We're out on Long Island. So we came out right at the beginning of the pandemic at the end of March. And we're adjusting. I mean, the first couple of weeks were certainly an adjustment period. Let's put it that way with the homeschooling. We have an 11 and a 10-year-old. So that took a little bit of time. But listen, I think we're trying to look at this silver lining. At the end of the day, we are surrounded by people that I love every single day and getting to spend a lot more time with my kids. I was doing a lot of traveling right before this happened. So I'm just getting a lot more time with them. And again, surrounded by people I love and who I think still love me after all.
It's testing everyone's relationships, I think, both professionally and personally. How are you guys sort of, balancing the work time and the, family time and off work time? I think everything is sort of blurring together right now. Are you delineating between like the work day and the weekend and all of that?
I would love to tell you we're doing it very successfully. It hasn't been very successfully. We have enacted an hour of dinner time when all devices are turned off every night. And that's about as close as we've gotten to true separation from everything. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I think it just, the situation we're in naturally lends itself to feeling like you're always on. And unfortunately, I think we kind of fall into that trap a lot. I think it's just important to remind ourselves of the importance of balance. And just maintaining that balance. Otherwise, it's very easy to get burnt out within this setting as well.
Yeah, and of course, this comes at a time when you and your team would naturally be especially busy, given the upfront time when the networks look to go out and make their pitches to advertisers to secure ad dollars for the coming season. So of course, an extra even busier time of year for you. Given all of going on right now, what is the state of the news market as we head into what would typically be like negotiation time for the networks?
Yeah, I think news is in a relatively interesting marketplace as it relates to what's happening right now. A lot of our categories some of our largest categories are still doing fairly well, relatively well, considering everything that's going on around them right now. Categories like financial and pharma still tend to be advertising and doing, again, relatively well, as opposed to some of the other categories that are a little bit more endemic to maybe cable entertainment that are really struggling right now. So we're in a bit of a unique marketplace. I think we've also seen, because of the really big influx of younger viewers that have come on in, cable news in particular has, and I know certainly I could speak for Fox News, has seen an influx of younger skewing advertisers that are trying to target those younger viewers. Our 18 to 49 audiences have increased over 100%. And if you would have told me, at the beginning or 2 months ago that, Fox News would be the #1 primetime network on 18 to 49 in cable, I probably wouldn't have believed you. And now all of a sudden we're in that situation. So we're seeing a lot of younger advertisers come on in, which is helping the cable news marketplace overall, I believe. So while we did have, the first several weeks of the pandemic, we did see quite a bit of advertiser loss. We did grant quite a bit of relief. We tried to be as flexible as possible, understanding the conditions that a lot of our clients were in. But really, the last several weeks, we've seen a lot more dollars coming on in than going out. And again, a lot of that is from advertisers coming on in to try to reach those younger those younger audiences, which again, with everything going on right now, the lack of sports, are really increasingly hard to reach.
What types of categories are perhaps new to the news marketplace or new to Fox News that you see coming in?
Yeah, so I think there's kind of two different groups, and one is really focused on reaching that younger audience. So you have categories like QSR, which weren't historically very large advertisers within the news space, are now some of our biggest advertisers within the QSR. And that's all, again, takeout or delivery service that they're promoting. You have a lot of the younger skewing movie streaming services that have come out as well. So that's where we're seeing like a lot of those younger dollars that have come on in. But while you're also seeing those younger dollars, and tech's in there as well, you're seeing some on the tech side that are trying to reach those younger audiences. But also our upscale audiences are actually up considerably as well. Our 100K plus audiences are up over 100%. So you're seeing a lot of financials that have come on in to take advantage of that. You're seeing a lot of corporate advertisers that are coming on in to take advantage of the professionals that are now home all day long, many of which are watching the news during the day. And I think, all of a sudden moving the entire workforce into the home, again, much of that workforce has the TV on in the background, the news on in the background while they're working. So again, I think that explains why we've seen that pretty significant increase in overall upscale and professional viewership, as well as a lot of this money that's been coming on in to reach those viewers as well.
How long do you think those new consumer behaviors might last? Are these consumer behaviors that you think could be more long-term and sort of change a little bit the business model for the network? Or do you think these are sort of fleeting in the moment reactions to what's taking place?
Yeah, well, I think this notion, one is I'm not sure if any of us know how this is going to permanently change how we work. But I think one thing we know is that many more people will now be working from home moving forward, because I think it's proven successful for a lot of businesses. So just by the nature of a lot more professionals being home during the day, I think you're going to see that elevated viewership, that elevated younger as well as more upscale and professional viewership during those daytime hours. So I think that will continue. We did see, a massive spike the first several weeks of this story, and then a gradual plateauing off. But the plateau is still, up 80, 70, 80% in overall viewership. So the plateau of viewership is incredibly high, and that stayed for the last several weeks. And we don't really see that going down anytime soon. We also, this story is a story that is unfortunately going to be with us for quite some time. So I think we're going to continue to see it, resonate, and a lot of the younger viewers continue to come to the network, because it's incredibly important for them to be following as well. So, while I don't have a crystal ball, I would say we're going to be seeing this audience behavior for quite some time. And I could tell you that advertisers are planning their upfront schedules around it. So they're looking at fourth quarter and saying, okay, it looks like, we should be within the news marketplace in fourth quarter. Again, these were advertisers that previously maybe didn't buy news. Right. They're talking to us now about upfronts. So they're projecting that audience will stay at least through fourth quarter.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about how you think, deal making could proceed? Obviously, a lot in the very beginning was about real-time reactions, and it was really hard to predict much more out than like a week or two. At this point, are there advertisers that are ready to, commit for longer terms, looking into, Q4 and into 2021? Or are we still at a place where, the crystal ball is limited in sort of making those types of long-term commitments?
No, we are talking to advertisers, quite a few actually, that are looking at doing upfronts on relatively similar time frame as to what they've done in the past. So I think we are going to do some form of an upfront with quite a few advertisers. Again, it's not going to be to the extent that we have done in years past. We're going to see, I think, a couple of different waves. We'll see that normal broadcast upfront wave that'll probably go obviously a little bit later than normal. And then you're probably going to see a calendar wave that might be a little bit larger than normal, because some folks are going to wait for the calendar upfront. It really depends on the category. And that's why we've really tried to approach the marketplace and deal with each advertiser at a time on their own terms. Because each advertiser has such unique needs right now and is impacted differently. Even within categories, we're seeing advertisers, even within the same category, have different needs. So we're working with them on their timeline, and we'll move when they're willing to move and ready to move.
One of the words that I hear a lot now, it feels like probably the key word of the year, is flexibility. How are you thinking about flexibility? What does that mean as a point of negotiation at this time? And could the idea of flexibility, which of course is baked into deals always, is it changing? Like, what might flexibility look like moving forward?
Yeah, listen, I think flexibility means we've seen it actually take a couple of different forms. One is just flexibility in terms of how much money is firm and how much is they can actually cancel. That's the most basic form. The other form that we've seen advertisers come on in and ask for is flexibility to shift amongst various different networks that might be within an overall media organization. So there's that flexibility. We've seen advertisers even come to us with unique flexibility based on their unique business situation. So if something happens with their individual business, they've asked for flexibility terms for that particular business line. So it takes many forms. And again, I think that certainly those requests will be in for the upfront. We've been, as I mentioned earlier, incredibly flexible during this period, and we've tried to be as understanding as we possibly can of each advertiser's needs. And I think if you ask the marketplace, you'd hear back that we've worked with them during obviously their most difficult times, understanding the value of that long-term partnership. Even when flexibility wasn't baked in, we still worked with them and were flexible with them in the sake of the long-term partnership.
I'm Janine Poggi, and I'm here with Jeff Collins, who is the head of ad sales for Fox News. As a reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them on our social channels, and we will get to them during our conversation. So, Jeff, one of the things that we were talking about earlier on was this idea of brands blacklisting phrases around COVID-19 and coronavirus and the pandemic and all of that, especially as it relates to digital advertising. From a cable news side, what have you seen on both the digital side and then also from the TV side?
Yeah, it's been very interesting because it's kind of been a tale of two different platforms where you have on the digital side at the onset of this, you did see a lot of sort of knee-jerk reaction, a lot of blacklisting pretty much across the marketplace of the word coronavirus, COVID-19. And obviously that created a lot of challenges for news publishers where the majority of the stories across the site were related to what's happening right now in the virus itself. So that's really was the first several weeks. We've seen a lot of those restrictions come down for a couple different reasons. One is when you blacklist most of the web, your costs go way up. So just practically people had to become a little bit more lenient with those blacklists. The other was we've seen a lot of industry bodies like the IAB that's come on out and talked about the importance of supporting news and legitimate news organizations during this period. So you've seen a lot of advertisers that have adjusted their campaigns and started to work to refine those blacklists a lot more. So that's not just a blunt tool of one word like coronavirus, but that they are supporting professionally produced news. So that's on the digital side. But what's been interesting on the linear side is we have not had advertisers pull out because of coronavirus related content. In fact, we haven't had any. So you have this sort of knee-jerk reaction at first on the digital side, but on the linear side, on TV, we have not had folks pull out of any of the coverage of our coronavirus coverage. In fact, we've had people leaning into it and a lot more new advertisers coming on in to be within that coverage, whether it's the hard news coverage or some of our lighter coverage.
Yeah, are there places in particular where advertisers want to be at this time? Is it, the prime time shows? Are they looking more at the, hard news coverage? Do you see a preference over the types of content they're aligning themselves with at this time?
Yeah, it really depends on the individual advertiser's goals. So we look at it in a couple of different buckets. One is that hard news bucket. And we've seen a lot of advertisers that have come on in for things like our town hall events. We did one this last Sunday with President Trump, Secretary Mnuchin, and Vice President Pence. That was moderated by Brett Baer and Martha McCallum. We saw a huge influx of advertisers that came on in to take advantage just of the overall increased viewership of that event. And again, that was more of a hard news event. But then you also have, really uplifting stories. And I think our network has done a very good job of balancing both. I think if we were just putting on sort of the hard news all day long, people might get a little bit burnt out. But we started a new series this year. It's called America Together. And what we're really trying to do is be able to highlight stories that are uplifting stories of people that are just doing incredibly inspiring things in the face of this pandemic. That's running throughout the entire network. Actually, it's running through all networks, all sites right now. We've run hour-long specials around it. And viewers are really turning out for that type of content as well. So advertisers have come on in. We have over a dozen advertisers that have come on in to sponsor that uplifting type of content. And again, it really depends on their creative messaging. If their creative messaging is a very more serious tone, they'll come on in for something like our town halls. If their creative messaging is a little bit more emotional, they'll come on in for, say, America Together. And then we also have, on the far end of the spectrum, more comedic content. The Greg Gutfeld Show airs Saturday nights. It's actually something you might not know. It's a #1 rated late night show over Colbert and Fallon's show, which I think was probably surprising for a lot of folks. And that is a much more comedic take and lighthearted take on what's happening with the news. And we've seen advertisers that have gravitated towards that as well. The last, which I've actually found interesting, is our opinion programming and the influx of clients that have come on in for that. Our primetime hours now are the highest rated on 18 to 49 across all of cable. And there's a lot of displaced sports dollars. And when you look at our primetime viewership, it's younger and it's really loyally engaged audiences that are fans of the actual programs. And what are sports advertisers looking to reach, which is younger fans. And we have that in prime time. So we've seen a lot of the sports dollars have actually migrated into some of our primetime opinion shows as well.
Gotcha. Thanks to those who are watching at home. A few shout outs to Natasha, Doug, Peter, Willie, and Brian. Thank you for joining us. You know, of course, during this time, I think right now, if we weren't in the middle of a pandemic, the thing that we would probably be talking about, or not probably, most certainly be talking about, is the election and what Fox News has planned for coverage and also opportunities for advertisers. Has, coronavirus overshadowed election plans or overshadowed interest in coverage? And, how are you talking to the marketplace right now about the election?
Yeah, so we've had several clients that came on board relatively early to sponsor our election coverage. They're obviously staying with that election coverage, and judging by the amount of clients that we've had to come on and take advantage of some of these town halls, I think there's going to continue to be tremendous interest in the election. One thing that's interesting, though, is really the timing of when this all hit. The election really comes in waves. And the first wave is really at the beginning of first quarter with the primaries and the caucuses. That wave really ended when coronavirus hit. And the election really does go into this more natural lull during these times anyway, and really picks back up again in August and September as you get more into the conventions and the debates. And then, of course, the election in November. So we are in this natural lull of the election anyway. Obviously, it's probably a little bit more overshadowed right now because the story of the moment certainly is coronavirus and will continue to be for quite some time. But I would argue from a viewership perspective, the decision of who is going to be our next president is more important now than perhaps ever before, given what's happening with the coronavirus. So I would argue that the news of the day is actually going to make the election even more important and increase viewership even more. And we're hearing that from a lot of our advertisers too that want to be part of it.
Are you seeing any advertisers revamp or rethink their election plans? Have any asked to pull out or just are looking at, different things right now?
No, we haven't seen anybody ask to pull out of any of our election coverage to date. All of our sponsors have remained with us. We usually start to see a second wave of clients that we're starting to talk to, usually in the next month or so, that come on in for the conventions and then come on in for, again, the debates and election night. I think one of the questions people have is, what does it look like? Right? What do the conventions look like? So I think the marketplace might be delayed a little bit just because still looking for a little bit more clarity as to what a convention in the era of social distancing actually looks like before they might come on board for that. But overall, we're happy with the amount of and the number of sponsors that we have in already. Again, I do feel confident that once decisions are made around what it's actually going to look like on air, that you're going to see a lot of advertisers coming on in to take advantage again of that enhanced viewership.
Yeah, that was actually my next question. I was wondering if there are any contingency plans depending upon how things sort of kick off or what those things might look like, of how you sort of package some of these things or contingency plans for advertisers, around some of these events where there's just not a whole lot of clarity of what they might look like.
Yeah, so we've been working a lot with our producers and even our talent. We had a town hall the other day where Chris Wallace talked a lot about what could potentially happen at these conventions. We've also actually been talking to a lot of advertisers in the technology space about, okay, if this is a virtual convention or even virtual debates with virtual audiences, how can they partner with us and help us to actually bring that coverage to the rest of the country? So we're actually talking to advertisers about helping us with a lot of the election coverage from a technology standpoint to come on in if these events do turn a little bit more virtual than being there in person.
We have a question from social. What are the big challenges of selling advertising during a pandemic, particularly as the news cycle evolves and concerns of misinformation grows?
Yeah, listen, I think selling advertising during a pandemic, I think the biggest challenge is just what's happening to a lot of our clients' business, the uncertainty that those clients face. Again, it really varies by category, but day to day, a client's business is changing based on when states are opening and when they're closing. So I think it's just really being able to be more nimble and adapt to what's happening really in real time, as opposed to a TV industry, which is used to booking much further out and not having to maybe react as quickly in real time. We've just all had to get a lot more nimble and just, I think, a lot more understanding. I do think it's a lot less contentious from what I've seen in terms of negotiating and working with clients. And I think everybody is just understanding that flexibility is in need right now. And that's what that's how we've been trying to work with our partners.
Could TV deal making look more like digital moving forward? This need for perhaps more real time or closer to air and things like that. Do you expect that to be perhaps a consequence to all of this?
I've heard that before. I'm not entirely sure that will happen. I think digital is bought that way because it can be, quite frankly. I think if we did move TV to be bought closer to air, I think what advertisers have seen when they've historically waited for a scatter marketplace is the prices inflate, right? So you're paying higher pricing at that point. There's much more limited supply. Clients do want to be able to buy into the franchises and the particular content that they want. And I do believe that you're going to see a television futures market for the foreseeable future because of those reasons, because it allows an advertiser to get their historical base pricing, which is going to be well below the overall scatter market, and then secure the important real estate in original programming that they want to be able to secure.
Gotcha. So what do you think then could be perhaps some long-term impacts on, the news marketplace, on the TV ad industry overall? What are some things that could come out of all of this?
Yeah, as I said, I think for the news marketplace, what you're going to see is you're just going to see sort of a different mix of advertisers than you might have normally seen on the networks. And again, if you're watching the news networks now, you're probably already seeing that. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. For the overall marketplace, I think we're all adapting to this sort of work from home and Zoom calls and WebExes. I think it's working quite well. So I think you're going to see technology playing a much larger role in how we communicate. There's a lot of advantages to it. I could be in a meeting in LA at 10 o'clock and a meeting in Chicago at 11 o'clock. And you can pull in client and agency and all the different constituents for a particular piece of business on one Zoom. Whereas in the past, it was very difficult to do that because video conferencing was not really considered to be something that folks were willing to necessarily do. So I think technology is going to play a much larger role moving forward. That said, I miss people. I know everybody I work with misses people. I think there is an inherent energy that's missed when you're not there in person. So I do believe we will go back to ultimately having meetings and going out for lunches and getting back into that phase of this industry that we all, quite frankly, love so much. But I do believe we're going to have this sort of enhanced version now where we can also incorporate more folks from around the whole country into meetings because of technology that is coming out and we're utilizing right now.
Yeah, it's one thing I wonder. I feel like the ad industry has been so much based on like handshakes and lunches and drink meetings and all of that. It sort of goes with the history of it. And I just, wonder if we will see that part of all of it come back and when, it's an interesting part of this business, I think. So, it's something that we might all have to get used to, a different way of doing business.
Yeah, I think certainly for the foreseeable future, we're going to be operating this way. I think, our number one priority, obviously, is just the health and safety, not just of our employees, but of our partners as well. So I think until there's absolute certainty of safety, you're not going to be seeing a lot of that. Because, again, we can conduct business this way, but we are missing something. I think our clients would say that. I know the folks on my team would say that as well. We miss our partners, we miss being around them, and we miss each other.
So while you're home there with your kids, outside of news, what other types of content are you consuming?
Outside of news, we have been watching a lot of news. Outside of news, it's been interesting. I think one of the reasons that we've been, sort of tuning in at night is to sort of escape being in the same place all the time. So we've been watching a ton of those Our Planet and Planet Earth type of documentaries, just to feel like we actually have gotten away a little bit. The kids love that. They're big Masked Singer fans, so we're actually catching up on that and watching some of that. And they're also, again, an 11 and a 10-year-old. They're learning a lot about history, so we've been watching more historical type of movies that they like to watch as well. So it kind of runs the gamut, but certainly the news is on all day and a good portion of the night too.
Well, thanks, Jeff, for joining us. And as always, thank you to our Ad Age crew, Alfred Mascaroni, Anna Sakula, Max Sternlich, and Elise Leffering for making this live stream happen. And thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks, Janine.
Be well.
Bye-bye.